Evel Knievel was been characterized by many as being absolutely a wacko and a crazy guy who take a motorcycle and jump buses and off cliffs and all that sort of stuff. He wasn't that at all. He was a little bit of that, but he and I developed a very close, warm relationship, and I speak to him frequently. And he's having a lot of trouble physically now because stands to reason he does. I mean, practically every bone in his body has been broken over the years, and yet he would still get out there and do it. I remember we were in London doing he was jumping 21 English double-deck buses. He thought that was really cool. Wembley Stadium. They didn't even know who he was over there. This was after the Snake River Canyon here in this country. And so we went to the stadium, and by the time he'd been there about a week, and finally he had drummed up an audience, but he did it by bizarre things like driving the wrong way and on the streets. He refused to drive the way that the Brits drove. He said, the only reason you drive that way, the Germans just bombed you guys silly. You drive the wrong way. And making statements like that, which, I mean, the press really, they freaked out on him. And pretty soon they had built up such a huge audience for him that he arrived and he did his usual, run around with the cape, and I'm calling it for Wide World of Sports. And by that time, I'd really gotten to know him. In fact, I'd been out with him the night before. I went to bed, and he didn't. And the last time I left him the night before, he's contemplating jumping over the River Thames, whether or not it could be done. And I said, you better go get some rest. And so apparently he had a really tough night. But he came into the stadium, and I'm standing there, and this is hours before the jump, and he had his little trailer where he would rest before the jump down the corner of Wembley Stadium, and he looked so bagged. I said, Robert, that's his name, Robert Craig Knievel. He said, Robert, I said, and I looked at all those buses, I mean, 21 of them. And I said, Robert, and I said, what do you got? And he looked at it and said, oh man, he said, I can't do that. I said, well, pull a couple of out of there. No one's going to care at this point. I mean, no, I said, well, let's see what happens. Well, after he told me that he couldn't do it, I got on the phone with Doug Wilson, and he was in our truck there. I said, Doug, you get a hold of Roone or somebody. I said, and I told him, I'm not going to have a part of this. And he said, well, you go talk to him. I said, let's go talk to him together. So Doug came out, and he had done all the jumps of Evel Knievel that ABC did, and we did most of them, including the Snake River Canyon, and I was the elected person to do the commentary on it because Evel and I got along together. He was an old football fan, and he figured that, he's a real macho, tough guy, and he thought I was too, which he was terribly wrong, but he and I got along just great. And so knock on his door, and knock again. I opened it up, and he's sound asleep. And that'll tell you about something about the guy. In about an hour and a half or 2 hours, he's going to try to jump 21 buses that he doesn't think, and a motorcycle is going to be doing about 100 miles an hour. So I said, Robert, I said, what do you think? I said, I'll do it, no problem. Well, long story short, big build-up, sold out Wembley Stadium because everyone in London wants to see this maniac from the United States who's been giving all their bobbies all the trouble. And it was jam-packed. So he comes out and did his customary wheelies around with the cape flowing, going through smoke, and then he finally goes up this long ramp to the top of Wembley Stadium. And he had already told me, and I was down on the field with the microphone, and we were doing what they call live to tape. We were calling it live, and it was going to go on the air back in the States the way we called it. And so he had told me that when he gave me the thumbs up, he was going to go. But in the meanwhile, he did a couple, and the entire stadium sort of collected, and then he'd stop right at the edge and tease him. And he was a great audience builder. So finally, he goes back up, way at the top corner, and he goes, and I know he's going to go. And he was right. He made 20 and a half buses, and it was, oh man, it was a mess. And I had been with him with a couple of other falls, one up in Oregon, and this one I knew was bad. And he tumbled down the ramp, and the bike followed him down almost, and landed on top of him. And I dropped the microphone. I said, forget this, he's a friend of mine. I ran over and and was trying to pull the bike off him with a couple of the other security people. And he finally got the bike off, but I knew he had a bone sticking out of one arm and the blood coming out of his mouth. And I thought, it's got to have massive internal injuries. And I just was so mad at that I was even involved in this. And all of a sudden he said, Giff, Frank. And I thought, well, he's going to give me some last words or something for his family. I lean over and he said, Frank, get that broad out of my room. He was going through a divorce thing with his wife. I thought, oh no, what an assignment I have. And I said, Bob, how bad are you? He said, I'm going to walk out of here. I said, you can't walk. I said, I'm going to get you out of here. You're going to bleed to death, something like that. And so he said, get me up. So if you ever see Wide World, that's me carrying him out of Wembley Stadium. He was a rare bird, and he, in all honesty, was what television made him. And you couldn't, without television, who would care whether he was jumping over canyons or buses or trucks or whatever. But it takes about what, 7 seconds? I think that we timed it one time for him to reach 100 miles an hour and go over. And we turned that into an hour-and-a-half show, only on television.